The twin suns burned low over the slave market of Varney 9, painting the dusty ground in red and gold. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and fear. Shouts echoed through the crowded bazaar where cages lined both sides of the long road. Creatures from many worlds were locked inside, eyes empty, hope gone. Among them stood Lyria, a young alien girl with pale silver skin and glowing golden eyes. Her wrists were bound in thin metal cuffs that left faint marks. She was only 17 by human years, fragile and silent, wearing a torn white dress that once belonged to her family's house. But that family was gone now. They had sold her. Lyria's mother wouldn't even meet her eyes when the slavers took her away. Her father had whispered, "We had no choice," as if that made the betrayal softer. It didn't. The girl's heart felt hollow, as though something inside had died before the chains touched her. The slaver barked orders as potential buyers circled the cages. Alien traders clicked their tongues, scanning the captives for strength, beauty, or rare bloodlines. When one of them paused near Lyria's cage, she lowered her eyes, refusing to show fear. But inside, her hands shook. Then the crowd suddenly grew quiet. A human had entered the market, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark travel coat dusted from long journeys. Captain Elias Reed walked with steady steps. His face was calm, but his eyes carried the kind of sorrow that no one dared to question. People whispered as he passed. Humans were rare on Varnus 9 and feared. Their wars had left scars across many worlds. Reed stopped beside Lyria's cage. His gaze met hers through the bars. She expected disgust or amusement. Instead, she saw something strange in his eyes. Pity. The slaver grinned. "You have good taste, human. She's from the Lyrith bloodline. Royal descent, pure, beautiful, obedient. Bidding starts at 50 credits. Lyria's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She had stopped screaming days ago. One buyer raised his hand. 50, 60, shouted another. 80! The numbers climbed, but Reed said nothing. He simply watched, his expression unreadable. The slaver turned toward him eagerly. "You human? Surely you can pay more." Reed's voice was low, steady. 100. "And I'm not buying her for service," the crowd murmured. "Then what?" The slaver sneered. "You planning to return her to her family?" Reed's cold stare silenced him. "No, I'm freeing her." Lyria blinked. She thought she had misheard. The crowd burst into laughter. "Freeing a slave? On Varnus 9? You must be mad, human." Reed didn't argue. He tossed a small credit chip onto the table. It landed with a metallic click. 120. "That's final." The slaver hesitated. The chip was worth enough to buy a new ship engine. Greed won. With a smirk, he unlocked the cage and shoved Lyria forward. "She's yours, madman." Lyria stumbled out, her knees weak. She expected Reed to pull her with force or command her harshly like all owners did. But he didn't. Instead, he knelt slightly, looking her in the eye. "You can walk beside me, not behind." The words struck her harder than any whip. For a moment, she just stared at him, unsure if this was another cruel trick. But when he began to walk toward the exit, she followed, hesitantly, silently. The guards at the gate frowned. "You can't just take her off-world. She's marked property." Reed handed over an ID card, its edges glowing with military clearance. "Captain Elias Reed, Terran Command." "You want to argue with Earth Authority?" The guards backed away quickly. As they stepped outside, the hot wind of the desert hit Lyria's face. She breathed deeply for the first time in days. The suns were setting behind the dunes, painting the sky in burning orange. It almost felt like freedom, but her wrists were still bound, Reed noticed. Without a word, he drew a small tool from his belt and sliced the cuffs open. The metal fell with a soft clink onto the sand. Lyria stared at her hands, unable to believe it. "Why?" she whispered. Reed looked out toward the horizon. "Because someone should." She wanted to ask more, but his tone ended the conversation. They walked toward a small starship parked beyond the dunes, a sleek vessel with the name The Solace carved near the cockpit. As they approached, Lyria glanced back one last time. The slave market still glowed with cruel light in the distance. She knew she could never return, but as she watched the human open the ship's door and motion her inside, something began to change inside her chest. It wasn't hope yet, but it was something close. The door hissed shut behind them, sealing out the world. Reed walked to the pilot's seat and began starting the engines. The hum of power filled the air. Lyria stood silently by the door, unsure of what to do. "What will happen to me now?" she asked softly. Reed didn't look at her. We'll get you somewhere safe. After that, it's your choice, she frowned. My choice, he nodded. You're free now. That means you decide what happens next? Lyraya sank into the nearest seat, her mind spinning. She wasn't sure what freedom even meant anymore. But for the first time, she felt something that had been taken from her long ago. Dignity. As the ship lifted into the red night sky, her golden eyes reflected the stars. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered that this human might be the start of a story far greater than her pain. And beyond the clouds, the universe waited. The engines of the Solace roared to life, shaking the sand beneath them. The night sky of Varnus 9 stretched wide and dark, filled with streaks of light from distant ships leaving orbit. Inside the small human vessel, everything felt strange to Lyraya. The air smelled clean, the lights hummed softly, and no one shouted orders at her. She sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The human, Captain Elias Reed, sat beside her, focused on the glowing controls. His face was calm, almost expressionless, as if the chaos of the slave market had never touched him. Outside, the dunes began to fade beneath them. The ship tilted upward, climbing toward the stars. Lyraya whispered, Are they going to come after us? Reed didn't look at her. They always do. Moments later, a red light flashed across the dashboard. Incoming ships detected. 3 small attack crafts appeared on the radar, chasing fast. The slavers had noticed their lost prize. Reed's jaw tightened. He pressed a few switches and muttered, I was hoping for a quiet takeoff. The Solace jolted forward. Lyraya grabbed the edge of her seat as stars blurred into streaks. Laser fire flashed behind them, bright against the black sky. Hold on, Reed warned. The ship dove sharply through a field of floating rock, asteroid debris from an old mining site. Reed's hands moved quickly, guiding the ship between massive stones that tumbled slowly in the dark. The slaver ships followed, their engines burning white. One of them fired. The blast grazed their wing, shaking the cabin. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Lyraya screamed softly and covered her head. Reed turned slightly toward her, his voice steady. Stay calm. Fear won't save us. She forced herself to look up. His eyes were sharp but not cold. Somehow, even while flying through chaos, he looked completely in control. He flicked another switch and the ship's belly guns rotated backward. Computer lock rear turrets. The AI responded in a smooth voice. Targeting confirmed. Moments later, the Solace fired 2 plasma bursts. The blast hit one of the pursuers dead on. The slaver ship exploded in a silent bloom of blue fire. Lyraya gasped. You killed them. Reed's tone was dry. They were trying to kill us first. Another explosion shook them as debris hit their hull. He gritted his teeth, pushing the ship harder. The engines howled like angry beasts. Finally, he pulled a lever marked hyperdrive. A flash of white swallowed everything. The stars stretched, bent, and then snapped back into calm silence. The radar cleared. They were gone. Lyraya sat frozen, breathing fast. She had never traveled at light speed before. The sudden quiet made her realize her hands were trembling. Reed leaned back, exhaling slowly. We're safe. For now. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the engines filled the silence. Then Lyraya turned toward him and asked softly, Why did you save me? Reed stared at the endless dark outside the window. Because I didn't save someone else. A long time ago. Lyraya tilted her head. Who? He didn't answer. His eyes grew distant, lost somewhere far away. She looked down, unsure what to say. The quiet between them felt heavy, filled with unspoken pain. After a while, Reed stood. You should rest. There's a room down that hall, take it. You're free to move around. Free. The word felt strange in her mouth. She nodded slowly and walked down the narrow corridor. The doors hissed as they opened, revealing a small cabin, plain but clean. There was a narrow bed, a shelf, and a window showing the stars. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring out. The galaxy stretched forever, glowing softly in blue and silver. For the first time, she could see a life beyond her cage. Yet her heart still ached. Her family's voices echoed in her mind, her father saying we had no choice. Her mother turning away. It had all happened so fast. She wondered if they even felt guilt. She pressed her palm against the window, whispering, Maybe I'll never understand them. Back in the cockpit, Reed sat alone. His hand rested on a small locket tied to the console. Inside was a picture of a human girl, smiling, maybe 12 years old. His sister. The memory burned deep. When Lyraya had asked why he saved her, he had wanted to tell her everything. How his sister was taken by raiders during the Orion War. How he arrived too late. How he found only her broken bracelet in the sand. But he couldn't say it. Not yet. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, I couldn't save her, but maybe I can save this one. Suddenly, an alarm beeped softly. Reed opened his eyes. A signal trace. Someone was trying to track them through hyperspace. He cursed under his breath. They put a tracker on her. He jumped from his seat and ran toward Lyraya's cabin. She looked up startled as he entered. What's wrong? She asked. He scanned her with a handheld device. The screen blinked red. A small implant glowed under her shoulder skin, hidden, invisible. They tagged you, he said. That's how they'll find us. Her eyes widened in panic. Can you remove it? Reed nodded grimly. I'll try. It'll hurt a bit. She clenched her fists. Do it. He heated a small medical blade and pressed it gently against her shoulder. Lyraya gritted her teeth, holding back a cry. When the small metal chip came out, Reed crushed it under his boot. There, he said softly. They can't find you now. Lyraya's eyes met his. You didn't have to do all this. He gave a small, tired smile. Maybe I didn't. But I did. Outside the window, the stars shimmered faintly. Lyraya lay back, exhausted, as the solace continued to glide through the endless dark. Somewhere deep inside, she felt something strange, trust, and far behind. Them on the slave world of Varnus 9, the slaver lord stared at the empty cage and whispered into his comlink, Find them, the human and the girl. I want them alive. The hunt had just begun. The stars outside were peaceful, scattered like glowing dust across the black ocean of space. But inside the solace, everything was tense. The air was heavy with the smell of burnt metal from the last chase, and every small sound made Lyraya flinch. She sat alone in the control room, staring at the blinking lights on the console. Captain Reed had been gone for hours, checking the engines, inspecting damage, and patching the ship's wounds like an old soldier caring for his horse after battle. When the door finally slid open, he walked in covered with grease and sweat, his steps slow, his breathing uneven. You're hurt, she said at once. He waved her off. Just a scratch. But Lyraya saw the truth. A deep burn mark ran across his side, hidden beneath his torn jacket. The wound glowed faintly where the plasma blast had grazed him during the fight. She gasped. That's not a scratch. Reed grunted and tried to sit down in the pilot's chair. It'll heal. She shook her head and hurried toward him. Humans are strong, yes, but you're bleeding. When she reached for his jacket, he froze. For a second, the soldier in him wanted to push her hand away, but then he saw her eyes. They were soft, worried, shining gold under the dim light. Fine, he muttered. Just make it quick. Lyraya carefully helped him out of his jacket and shirt. His body was covered with old scars, each one a story she didn't know. Some looked like blade cuts, others like burns. She cleaned the wound with trembling hands. The antiseptic hissed as it touched his skin. Reed didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened. You've done this before, she said quietly. He gave a small smile. Too many times? Lyraya bit her lip. You fight too much. Reed chuckled dryly. And you talk too much. That made her laugh softly, her first real laugh since the day she was sold. For a brief moment, the walls of fear between them cracked. As she wrapped a bandage around his waist, she noticed a small metal tag hanging from a chain on his neck. The letters were worn but still readable. E. Reed, Terran Army, 47th Rescue Division. She touched it gently. You were a soldier? Was, he said. Not anymore. What happened? He looked down, his face shadowed. I stopped believing in orders. She didn't press further. Instead, she focused on tying the bandage properly. Her hands brushed his skin and she felt the faint tremble of pain beneath his calm surface. He had saved her life, but she could tell. He carried his own wounds far deeper than this one. When When she finished, he whispered, "Thank you." She smiled faintly. "Someone should take care of you for once." Reed leaned back, exhausted. The soft hum of the ship filled the silence between them. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful. But peace never lasted long in their world. The control panel beeped suddenly. An incoming transmission. Reed's eyes snapped open. He limped to the console and hit the switch. A rough alien voice filled the cabin. "Captain Reed, you have something that belongs to us. Return the girl and we'll let you live." Loraya froze. The voice was from the slaver lord himself. Reed replied calmly, "You'll have to come take her." The transmission cut off. Loraya looked terrified. "They found us again?" Reed nodded grimly. "They're tracking energy trails. They'll be here soon." She clenched her fists. "Because of me." He turned toward her sharply. "No, because of them." He began preparing the ship for another jump, but his movements were slower now. Pain pulling at every step. Loraya could see he was struggling. "Let me help," she said. He frowned. "You don't even know how to fly this thing." "Then teach me," she insisted. "I can learn." Reed stared at her for a long second. Then he sighed. "All right, sit there." She slid into the co-pilot seat beside him. He showed her the controls, how to monitor energy levels, how to engage the shields, how to track coordinates. Her golden eyes focused sharply on every movement. "You learn fast," he said. "My people were traitors once," she replied softly. "Before the wars?" Another alarm began to wail. Enemy ships, 5 this time, appeared on the radar. Reed's hands moved quickly over the controls, his wound forgotten. "They won't let up." The Solace lurched forward. Blasts of blue light streaked past them. Loraya followed his commands, raising the shields, adjusting the thrusters. The ship trembled but held strong. One of the enemies looped behind them, firing plasma bursts. Reed aimed their rear cannons and fired back, destroying one ship in a fiery bloom, but the next attack hit their side hard. Sparks flew. A pipe burst above them, spraying steam. "Reed!" Loraya shouted. "I'm fine," he yelled back, gripping the wheel. "Hold it steady." She grabbed the controls, heart pounding. For a moment, Reed's vision blurred from blood loss. Loraya noticed and shouted, "Don't pass out!" "I'm not planning to," he muttered, shaking his head. Finally, after a brutal chase, the Solace broke through the enemy formation. Reed hit the hyperspace switch once again. The stars stretched, then everything went silent. They made it. Loraya exhaled shakily. Her hands were trembling from adrenaline. Reed leaned back in his seat, pale but alive. She looked at him, her voice soft. "You risked your life again, for me." Reed smiled faintly. "That's what humans do." Her heart ached at the honesty in his tone. She whispered, "My people used to say humans were heartless. I think they were wrong." Reed turned his head slightly toward her. "They usually are." Loraya reached for the blanket beside her and gently covered him. His breathing slowed as exhaustion pulled him into sleep. She sat beside him quietly, watching the stars drift past. For the first time since her capture, she didn't feel like property. She felt protected. Yet, in the back of her mind, a shadow of fear still lingered. The slavers wouldn't stop. Someone had put a high price on her head, and she didn't even know why. As she watched the humans sleep, she whispered softly, "Who are you, Captain Reed?" Outside the ship, far away in the black sea of space, another vessel watched from the distance, silent, waiting, tracking them through faint energy trails. The hunt was far from over. The silence of space never lasted long. It was always broken by the hum of danger. Inside the Solace, the air felt heavier than before. The lights flickered faintly as the ship drifted through the shadows of an uncharted nebula. Pale blue clouds glowed outside the windows, giving the cabin an eerie calm. Loraya sat in the co-pilot's seat, her fingers tracing the control panel as if trying to memorize it. She had been learning from Captain Reed for 2 days now, how to read sensors, check power lines, and adjust flight paths. She wanted to help him. She needed to. Reed, however, was quiet. Too quiet. His wound had mostly healed, but something else bothered him. Something invisible. He kept checking the radar again and again, Lyraya noticed. "You're looking for something," she said softly. He nodded. "We lost them before, but slavers never quit. They'll send professionals next time." "Bounty hunters?" "Worse," he replied. "Trackers." Lyraya frowned. "What are trackers?" Reed leaned back, his expression grim. "They're hunters trained to find anyone, anywhere. Once they get your scent, they don't stop. Not until you're dead, or captured." The thought sent a chill down her spine. She looked out at the nebula, beautiful, calm, and terrifying. "Then where can we go?" Reed's eyes hardened. "Somewhere even they won't follow." He adjusted the coordinates manually. The ship turned toward a darker part of the nebula, a swirling storm of dust and lightning. "The Maelstrom Belt," he said. "No one flies in there unless they want to die." Lyraya swallowed. "And we're going in?" He smirked faintly. "Exactly." As the Solace entered the storm, space itself seemed to twist. Bolts of plasma flashed through the clouds. The hull shook. The noise was deafening, like thunder inside the ship. Lyraya clutched her seat. "This place, it's alive," Reed grinned slightly. "Feels that way, doesn't it?" The radar blinked suddenly. 3 red dots appeared behind them. Reed's smile vanished. "They found us," he said quietly. The dots grew closer. 3 sleek black ships built for speed and death. Bounty hunters. Reed's hands flew over the controls. "Hold tight." The Solace dove sharply into the lightning clouds. Blue bolts danced across the shields. The entire cabin glowed with electric light. The first enemy ship fired a missile. The explosion rocked them sideways. Lyraya screamed as sparks burst from the ceiling. Reed fought the controls, sweat dripping down his face. "Shields down to 40%, the computer warned. Rewrote auxiliary power," Reed shouted. Lyraya's hands moved quickly, remembering what he taught her. She redirected energy to the shields just as another blast hit. The ship groaned but held together. Reed shot her a quick glance. "Good work," she managed a shaky smile. "You said I learned fast." The second bounty hunter came up beside them, firing plasma beams. Reed rolled the ship hard to the left, barely avoiding the shots. The lightning storm flashed brighter around them, illuminating the enemy ships chasing like predators. "Can't outrun them here," Reed muttered. "We'll fight." He flipped a switch, arming the rear cannons. "You take the sensors," he said. "Tell me where they are." Lyraya scanned quickly. "One above, one behind, one on our right." "Got it." The Solace twisted in a spiral. Reed fired 3 bursts from the rear guns, 2 missed, 1 hit. The hunter ship exploded into blue fire. Lyraya gasped. "You hit him." 2 left, another blast hit their side. Metal tore. The alarm screamed. The ship spun out of control. Reed's knuckles turned white as he pulled on the controls. "Stabilizers offline," Lyraya cried. "We're going to crash." "Not today," he shouted. He slammed the emergency thrusters, turning the ship nose up just before they collided with a massive rock floating in the storm. The impact sent everything flying. Reed's forehead hit the console, blood trickling down. "Reed," she screamed. He shook his head, dazed but alive. "Still here." Through the window, the 2 bounty hunters circled back like vultures. Reed wiped the blood from his eyes. "They want us alive," he said grimly. "That means they'll board us." Lyraya's heart pounded. "Then what do we do?" He reached for his blaster rifle from the wall compartment and checked the charge. "Then we welcome them." Moments later, the ship shuddered as the first enemy docked. The sound of metal claws scraping against the hull echoed through the corridor. Reed moved silently to the door, gun ready. Lyraya followed, holding a wrench she barely knew how to use. The door burst open. 2 armored bounty hunters stormed in. Reed fired 2 clean shots. Both fell before they could react. Another entered, larger, armored head to toe. He grabbed Reed by the throat and slammed him into the wall. Reed grunted, trying to push back, but the man was strong. Lyraya, terrified, swung the wrench with all her strength. It hit the bounty hunter's helmet. He staggered. Reed took the chance. He drew a knife from his belt and plunged it into the man's chest joint. The hunter fell hard, For a moment only their breathing filled the air. Lyria dropped the wrench, shaking. You could have died, Reed exhaled slowly. So could you. He wiped his knife clean. Next time, don't stand so close. But his voice was softer now, almost protective. When the third hunter ship tried to escape, Reed limped back to the pilot's seat and targeted it manually. You don't get second chances, he muttered and fired. The explosion lit up the nebula like a new sun. Then silence returned. The Solace drifted again, scarred but alive. Lyria sat beside him, still trembling. You fought like a demon, he smirked faintly. Humans are good at surviving. She stared at him. You're more than that. He turned toward her, serious. Listen to me. They won't stop. Whoever wants you, it's big, bigger than money. Lyria frowned. Then what do they want from me? Reed hesitated. Maybe. What you are. She looked confused. What I am? He nodded slowly. You're not just anyone, Lyria. You were sold for a reason. Her golden eyes widened. You mean, my family? He looked away. They knew. The truth hit her like a punch. Her heart sank. Tears filled her eyes. Outside the ship, lightning rolled across the clouds. Inside, both sat in silence. Two lost souls bound by survival and growing trust. For the first time, Lyria whispered what she feared to admit. Maybe I was never meant to be free. Reed turned toward her, his voice quiet but firm. You are now. And as long as I'm breathing, no one will ever chain you again. The ship drifted into calmer space, carrying their wounded hope toward the unknown. The Solace floated quietly through the black ocean of stars. The battle was over, but the silence afterward felt heavier than the gunfire that came before. Broken metal panels still sparked softly in the corridors, and the faint smell of smoke lingered in the air. Lyria sat near the window, watching starlight dance across the cracked glass. Her reflection stared back at her. Tired eyes, bruised arms, and a heart that didn't know whether to hope or fear anymore. Captain Reed was in the control room, patching the last of the power lines. His jacket was torn and his face still carried dried blood from the fight. Yet his hands were steady, every movement precise. Finally, he stepped back and sighed. We're stable for now. Lyria turned to face him. How long until they find us again? He leaned against the wall. Could be hours. Could be days. Depends on who's hunting you. She swallowed hard. You keep saying me. But why me? I'm just... He cut her off gently. You're not just anything, Lyria. Her voice trembled. Then tell me the truth, please. Reed stared at her for a long moment, silent. The hum of the engines filled the space between them. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small metal disc. A data drive, its surface engraved with alien runes. I took this from one of the bounty hunters' ships, he said. Their mission logs were encoded, but I cracked them. They weren't after a runaway slave. They were after a royal heir. Lyria froze. A royal what? Reed nodded. Your last name, Lyrith. It's not just a family name, is it? Her hands trembled. No, it's the old house of the first moon. My people's ruling bloodline, but it was destroyed years ago. Not completely, Reed said quietly. You're the last one left. Lyria's breath caught. Her heart felt like it stopped beating for a moment. Memories rushed back. Her family's strange fear, their constant whispers, the day her father refused to let her leave the house. She had always thought it was about debt, but now, it all made sense. They sold me, she whispered, her voice breaking, to save themselves. Because I was a danger. Reed stepped closer. They were afraid. Your bloodline represents power, unity. To some, that's hope. To others, that's threat. Tears fell down her cheeks. They didn't even say goodbye. Reed's expression softened. He sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. I know how that feels. She turned her head toward him. You lost your family too? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. A long time ago, my sister. She was 12. Lyria's eyes widened. What happened? She was taken, he said quietly, during a raid on one of our colonies. I was too far away to reach her. When I got there, the place was ash. I found her bracelet in the dirt. He took a deep breath, staring at the floor. That's why I bought you that day. Not because you reminded me of her, but because I couldn't let another innocent soul vanish into those chains. Lyria wiped her tears, her voice trembling. You saved me because you couldn't save her. He nodded. Maybe that's selfish. But I'd do it again. For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet was thick with emotion, pain, guilt, and something else growing quietly between them. Finally, Lyraya said softly, "You're not selfish. Reed, you gave me something no one else ever did, choice." He looked at her, and in his tired eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in anyone since her childhood. Kindness without reason. Outside the window, a soft blue light began to glow as they drifted toward a small moon. The planet below shimmered with frozen lakes and silver forests. Reed stood and pointed. "That's Valen 3, uninhabited. Quiet. We'll rest there." Lyraya nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you." The ship entered the moon's thin atmosphere. The landing was rough, metal screeching as the Solace touched down on a snow-covered ridge. Reed powered down the engines and stood, stretching his sore limbs. "Stay close," he said. "Cold enough out there to freeze a lung." They stepped out into the alien cold. The air was crisp and biting. Lyraya wrapped herself in Reed's coat, which he wordlessly handed her. She looked small inside it, like a child wearing armor. They walked together across the icy surface toward a small cave that glowed faintly with blue crystals. Inside, the air was warmer. The crystals pulsed gently, lighting the walls. Reed set up a small heat unit. "We'll stay till morning," he said. Lyraya sat down near the fire and stared at the blue glow. "Captain, can I ask something?" "Go ahead. Do you ever stop feeling guilty?" Reed paused. "No, you just learn to live with it." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe I can learn that too." He smiled faintly. "You will." For a while they sat in silence, the sound of wind echoing through the cave entrance. The warmth of the small fire made the crystals shimmer like stars. Lyraya turned her head toward him again. "You risked everything for me, Reed. You didn't even know who I was." He met her gaze. "Didn't need to. You were someone worth saving." Her lips parted slightly, a soft breath escaping. For a moment the firelight caught her golden eyes, and Reed felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt since before the war. Lyraya whispered, "I think you're the first human I've ever trusted." He looked at her quietly for a long moment, then replied, "And maybe you're the first alien I ever believed in." The two sat by the fire, two broken souls from different worlds finding warmth in a galaxy of cold. Outside, the storm howled softly, but inside that glowing cave, something fragile and real began to grow. The morning light on Valen 3 was soft and cold. Blue mist drifted over the frozen ridges, wrapping everything in silence. Inside the crystal cave, Lyraya slowly woke to the sound of soft beeps, the hum of the Solace in the distance. Captain Reed was already awake, standing outside the cave entrance. His figure looked sharp against the pale horizon, one hand resting on his blaster, the other holding a small comm device. His breath fogged in the air as he stared at the blinking screen. The message had come in during the night. A human encryption code. It wasn't from the slavers, it was from Earth Command. "Captain Elias Reed, this is Command Officer Hale. We have tracked your unauthorized vessel leaving Terran space. You are harboring a high-value alien fugitive. Transfer her immediately to the nearest Terran outpost and you will be cleared of all charges. Fail to comply and you will be hunted as a traitor." Reed stared at the message for a long time. The small holographic seal of the Terran flag flickered. Before fading out, the word traitor didn't frighten him. It was the order that did. He closed the device and slipped it into his coat just as Lyraya appeared behind him. Wrapped in his jacket, her hair glowed faintly in the dawn light, her golden eyes calm but curious. "Is something wrong?" she asked softly. Reed forced a small smile. "Just morning messages," she tilted her head. "From your people?" He nodded. Something like that. He turned away before she could see the worry on his face. He had been a soldier long enough to know what this meant. If Command had located him, others wouldn't be far behind. Lyraya stepped beside him, gazing at the horizon. "It's beautiful here," she whispered, quiet. "It doesn't feel like any world I've known." "Peaceful," Reed said quietly. "That's why it won't last." They spent the next few hours repairing the Solace. The ship's hull was dented, the engines coated in frost. Lyraya worked beside him, learning fast, her hands surprisingly steady. When she asked where they would go next, Reed hesitated. "Somewhere far. Somewhere safe," she smiled sadly. "There's no such place anymore." He didn't argue. Later, when she went inside to rest, Reed stood by the ship's ramp, gripping the comm device again. His thumb hovered over the reply button. His mind was a battlefield. His soldier's duty on one side, his human heart on the other. If he turned her in, he would be safe. No more running, no more bounty hunters. Maybe he could return to Earth, rebuild his life. But when he thought of her trembling voice, her quiet courage, the way she had laughed for the first time on his ship, something inside him refused to move. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I already made my choice the day I freed her." Then, without hesitation, he crushed the comm device under his boot. The metal cracked, sparks bursting across the snow. That night, the stars returned. The two of them sat inside the ship, eating in silence. The engines hummed softly in the background. Lariah noticed his quietness. "You've been thinking," she said. Reed smiled faintly. "Always. About your message?" He looked at her sharply. "You knew?" She nodded. "I heard the signal. I didn't listen, but I saw your face," Reed sighed. "They offered me a deal. Freedom, if I give you up." Her fork fell to the table with a soft clink. "And you didn't?" He shook his head. "No, I don't trade people." Not anymore. Her eyes filled with emotion, pain, disbelief, and something warmer. "You gave up your home." "For me," he chuckled softly, "home isn't a place. It's the people you choose to protect." Lariah looked down, fighting tears. "You could have been free," Reed's voice grew firm. "You don't understand. I am free. The day I stopped obeying orders that hurt the innocent, that was the first real freedom I've ever known." She stared at him, her heart swelling with something she couldn't name. Gratitude, admiration, maybe love. He looked back, his blue eyes softer than she had ever seen them. "You're not a burden, Lariah. You're a reminder of what's worth fighting for." For a long moment they sat there, the hum of the ship wrapping them in silence. Then the alarm blinked red. "Proximity alert," Reed jumped up. "They found us again." Lariah ran to the console. "How? We're in deep space!" Reed's jaw clenched. Earth Command must have leaked our coordinates. They want both sides to finish this quietly. On the radar, 3 large ships appeared, heavily armed, moving fast. Not slavers this time. Military hunters, Reed's voice hardened. "Strap in." Lariah obeyed, heart pounding. "You can't fight them, Reed. They're your own people." He met her gaze with fierce calm. Then they should have remembered what it means to be human. The solace roared to life. The engines screamed as Reed pushed the ship to its limits. Laser fire streaked across the darkness, explosions flashing around them like storms of light. Lariah cried out as the ship shook violently. "They'll destroy us," Reed shouted back. "Not if I destroy their pride first." He spun the ship in a sharp turn, flying straight toward the lead Terran cruiser. Lariah's eyes widened. "You're insane." Reed smirked. "Maybe, but that's what humans do best." At the last second, he fired a cluster of plasma mines. The mines exploded against the cruiser's shields, blinding their sensors. Reed used the moment to dive beneath them, slipping through the chaos. The smaller Terran ships crashed into each other, trying to follow. The radar cleared. They had escaped again. When the noise faded, the Solace drifted quietly between distant stars. Both of them sat in silence, hearts still racing. Lariah turned to him, voice trembling. "You fought your own kind. For me." Reed looked tired, but his voice was steady. "Not for you, Lariah. For what's right." She swallowed hard. "Then, what happens now?" Reed stared out at the endless dark. "Now we stop running. It's time to face whoever started this." Lariah frowned. "The ones who put the price on me?" He nodded. "Yes, and if they want to fight?" His voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "They'll learn what it means when humanity stops holding back." Outside the window, the stars burned brighter, as if waiting for the storm to begin. And somewhere deep within the Solace, 2 souls, one human, one alien, understood that their fates were now one. The stars of Sector 9 shimmered like cold diamonds as the Solace approached the dark edge of a dying planet. It was once called Ratel, a sacred world to Lariah's people, now reduced to ruins after years of war. Broken towers floated above cracked plains, glowing faintly with the energy of ancient machines. Captain Reed sat in the pilot's chair, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the silent world below. Beside him, Lariah stood in quiet awe, her golden eyes reflecting the shattered beauty of her lost home. "So this is where it ends," she whispered. Reed nodded. "This is where it began too, isn't it?" Lariah closed her eyes. My ancestors ruled here. They built the first peace among the stars, and now it's just dust. Reed looked at her with quiet respect. Maybe peace doesn't die, it just waits for someone brave enough to find it again. She smiled faintly. You make it sound simple, he shrugged. Simple doesn't mean easy. They landed on the old temple ridge where wind howled through cracked pillars. The air shimmered with strange energy, remnants of old technology still humming beneath the ground. As they stepped outside, Lariah felt something, like a soft vibration under her skin. She looked down and saw faint light pulsing from the stone beneath her feet. Symbols appeared, ancient and familiar. Reed raised his weapon cautiously. What is that? Lariah stepped forward, her voice trembling. It's reacting to my blood. The light grew brighter, spreading through the ruins. A holographic figure flickered to life before them, tall, ethereal, and unmistakably Larathian. It was a recording, old and fading. To the last of our bloodline, the voice said. The time has come. The power of the moon heir must never fall to tyranny. Only through unity with the other kind can peace be reborn. Reed frowned. Unity with the other kind? Lariah turned to him slowly. They meant humans. Before Reed could respond, an explosion echoed through the valley. The ground shook. He spun around, eyes narrowing. 3 massive ships broke through the clouds, slaver warships flanked by Terran interceptors. The alliance of greed and authority had arrived. Reed cursed under his breath. They joined forces. They want both of us. Lariah's face hardened. Then they'll get more than they expect. He grinned. That's my line. The first blast struck near the temple, throwing shards of stone into the air. Reed grabbed Lariah's hand and pulled her behind a fallen pillar. They'll try to land troops. We need to hold them off. She nodded, clutching a small energy pistol he'd given her days before. I'm not hiding this time. Good, he said. I was done running too. Moments later, the sky filled with burning lights as dropships descended. Armored soldiers poured out, weapons ready. Reed moved like a shadow, firing with deadly precision. Each shot was fast, clean, and deliberate. Lariah covered his flank, surprising even herself with her accuracy. The ground shook again as another wave landed. A voice echoed from the largest ship, deep and cruel. Surrender the girl, human. Your kind has no place in this war. Reed shouted back, You're right. I'm not in your war. I'm ending it. He pressed a detonator. The Solace, parked behind them, fired its hidden railgun. A blinding beam tore through the enemy ranks, scattering fire and smoke. The soldiers fell back, regrouping, but the air suddenly shimmered, an energy pulse spreading from the ground. The ancient Larathian relic beneath the temple awakened fully. Lariah gasped as light surrounded her. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever before. The markings on her skin lit up like silver fire. Reed stared in awe. Lariah, what's happening? She raised her hands, her voice trembling but clear. It's my birthright. The moon heir's power? It connects life. I can stop them, but it will drain me. Reed's voice hardened. No, there has to be another way. There isn't, she said softly. My people built this place to protect the galaxy from greed. It responds only to my blood. He stepped closer, grabbing her shoulders. You'll die. She looked up at him, eyes full of both fear and peace. Maybe that's how peace is reborn. Reed shook his head fiercely. I didn't save you just to lose you. She smiled sadly. You didn't save me, Reed. You taught me to save myself. The ground thundered again. Enemy troops advanced, their lights cutting through the dust. Reed looked from the soldiers to Lariah, and in that moment he made his choice. He pressed his forehead to hers for a brief second. Then we do this together. Her eyes widened. Reed, no. The power will... He interrupted softly. You said it connects life, right? Then let it connect us, he took her hands. The energy pulsed between them, swirling like a storm. The ancient machine responded, not to one bloodline, but to 2 hearts bound by choice. The ruins erupted with white light. The energy wave surged outward, engulfing the battlefield. The slavers screamed as their ships disintegrated. The Terran cruisers lost power, their engines going dark. In the heart of it all stood Reed and Lariah, surrounded by spiraling light. She felt his strength holding her up, his voice steady in the storm. I'm here, he whispered, always. Then everything went silent. When the light faded, the battlefield was still. The enemy ships drifted lifeless in the sky. The storm had passed. Reed opened his eyes slowly. He was lying among the ruins, the air filled with faint golden dust. Lariah was beside him, unconscious but breathing. Her glow had dimmed, her power spent. He crawled closer and lifted her gently. "Hey," he whispered. "You did it." Her eyes fluttered open, weak but warm. "We did it," he smiled faintly. "You're not allowed to die, remember?" She managed a tiny laugh. "And you're not allowed to argue with a queen." Reed looked up and saw hundreds of small ships descending from the clouds. Not enemies this time. Lyrathian survivors. Her people. They had come, drawn by the pulse of her power. As they landed, soldiers and civilians knelt before her. A Lyrathian elder stepped forward, bowing deeply. "The heir has returned. The blood of unity lives." Lyria looked around, her voice weak but proud. "No, not just my blood, ours." She turned to Reed, her eyes soft. "He is part of this too." The elder nodded. "Then humanity will be honored beside us." Reed stood silently, unsure how to react. But when Lyria reached for his hand, the answer was simple. The crowd watched as she placed her royal crest in his palm. "Where I rule, you belong," she said softly. "My savior." "My equal." Reed smiled faintly, the wind brushing through his hair. "Guess humans finally learned how to bow." She laughed weakly. "And Lyrathians finally learned how to love." Above them, the twin suns rose once more, shining over a world reborn. For the first time in centuries, peace returned to the galaxy, born from a choice made by two hearts that refused to surrender. And as the solace lifted into the sky again, its name finally meant what it always promised: hope.